It's not altogether too uncommon that I'm asked how I got so good in a Reaver. And I want to preface this video by first saying that I'm not the best pilot in Planetside 2. I'm not even the best pilot for the NC. But I do consider myself above average. I do think I'm a fairly good pilot. And there's a method to the way that I do things when it comes to flying. And I figured I'd share some of that information. Once you've got the basic control of your aircraft down, the next important thing is situational awareness. And knowing when to fight and when to pull back. Now we'll see here, off on the left side of my screen, shortly there will be a friendly Liberator with its belly, therefore its main gun, pointed horizontally, which means it's firing at something high up in the air. But I can't see that target for a short while, but I do head off in that direction anyway to intercept whatever is firing at him. In this case, it is an enemy scythe. By knowing ahead of time the direction and heading of my enemy, I'm able to take him out and assist the friendly Liberator so that it can get back safely. Now that scythe did have a wingman, a second scythe, and notice how I fire here in short bursts. And when I'm not firing, I'm reloading. You want to fire in short bursts and fire ahead of your target to lead your target and try and get a decent feel for the distance of the enemy ESF before you commit to holding down the trigger. Those short bursts will give you an idea of where you should be aiming, and if you start doing that, you'll find that you're able to hit moving targets a lot better than if you were to just point your reticle at them and then squeeze the trigger and hold. Now here there's a ground target that looks tempting, but I don't want to jump straight into a fight. I want to skirt the edges of a fight first. So here I slip into cockpit mode, and I'm looking at my altitude meter in the lower right. I want to hover between 700 to 900 meters above a fight before I actually get into it. Now I want to be this high up. Because at this altitude, enemy flat cannons like anti-air maxes and stationary turrets may not be able to render you, so you have some protection. And in this way, I can get a feel for where friendlies are firing, where enemies are firing, and I can get the drop on unaware targets, like this tank. After getting off a volley, to make sure I don't hit the ground, I pull up and then burst in the direction of the rear of the tank and swing back around. I get a volley off and then I'm getting locked on, and the enemy is successful in locking onto me. So I pop my flares, and normally I want to get out of a fight as soon as my flares are gone. But I'd already dealt enough damage to the mag rider that turning around was beneficial. I flew low to try and prevent the follow-up lock, because there usually is going to be a follow-up lock. And now we see I do something here that's very important for most new pilots to learn. I break away from what may have been essentially an easy kill. There was a scythe that flew right in my path. I could have tailed that scythe and probably taken it out. It probably could have been an easy kill. But I didn't have my flares, and I was amidst some potential AA. And although I might have taken out that scythe, even though there was no guarantee of it, I may have had a good chance of losing my Reaver, and it's actually not worth it. You can't benefit your side from the air if you don't have your Reaver, so you want to pull back, let your flares cool down, repair your Reaver, and then get back into the air. Now we see here, again, I am flying up and to the left to get on the outskirts of the fight. Now I've been in the fight, I've seen what's going on, I have a feel for where the enemy is, where friendlies are, and the basic flow of the battle. And that comes into play here in just a moment. Here there is an enemy infantry target, and I'm a little too far when I first start firing to notice that it's a max. So those short little bursts that I'm firing with my rotary would have normally killed a normal infantry unit, but by the time I figured out it was a max, it was already too late, and my friendly ground forces were able to take out that max. Now here, I'm able to use the nearby terrain to protect myself. I got locked on during that little bit, and I popped my flares. But because I have a feel for the fight, I know where the enemy is coming from and where the lock-on was coming from. So I used this terrain to my advantage. And here I'm fired on by an enemy sniper, which was a mistake because all that did was show me the direction of some enemy infantry. And I do end up getting a kill off of it. The reason I took that guy out was because I thought the lock-on was coming from some of the infantry down there, and I was hoping taking one of them out would eliminate the lock-on. But in this case, it did not, and I did take a hit from that direction. It must have been one of the other infantry that did it. I contemplate turning back around to finish off those easy infantry targets, but knowing that one of them has an anti-air rocket launcher, it's probably best for me to just turn back and repair, which is what I do. Now, as I'm repairing here, I'm looking at my mini-map, and I notice that there's a flying Liberator. There's an enemy Liberator right above us. As I noticed this, I used my afterburners once I jump in to get out of the position that I was in, because there's a potential chance that he may have been targeting me. He does not. And now I take advantage of the Liberator, the enemy Liberator's weak spot, which is above and behind the Liberator. I stay in this weak spot of the Liberator where his tail gun and his main gun can't fire on me. Neither can his nose cannon. And in doing so, I'm able to take that out. There is a second Liberator in the air, or some other large aircraft in the air, firing at me, and I need to burst out of here because I'm low on ammo. I don't have enough to fully take that down, and I want to pull enemy aircraft over my anti-air cannons. So knowing that the general area over there is not safe, and knowing that I need more ammunition, I head over to the Havar tech plant and get some repairs and reload. And now there's that large aircraft on the radar again. So once again, I hop into my aircraft and I do this reverse maneuver, which lets me fly and reverse my aircraft very, very rapidly to get me out of potential danger. Turns out that this large aircraft is a Galaxy, and it looks to me that they sacrificed the Galaxy by bailing out. So I come and check the roof of the tech plant to see if there's any enemies, and indeed there are. I was a little surprised that essentially a full volley, or at least nearly a full volley of breakers, wasn't able to take out that infantry unit, but I do get him with the rotary cannon. And now I'm scouting the general area to make sure that there aren't any other infantry units that jumped out of that Galaxy, because the Galaxy plummeted to its demise after taking a lot of damage, which means there was no pilot, which means somebody jumped out. And I suspect it was more than one infantry unit, but anybody else in that area, any friendlies in that area, will be able to clean that up. My Reaver is much more powerful than just taking out one infantry unit in a side battle, so I take it back to the main fight and scan the ground for other targets. Now I want to make sure I'm taking out key targets like this Sunderer. My breaker rockets are a very powerful addition to the new conglomerate presence in this area. And it's my role to do things like that and prevent spawn points from coming up.
Enemy engineer in the area.
Notice the quick short bursts as I fire at infantry as well. You want to follow the same rules as targeting any hard-to-hit small target. And I see an enemy infiltrator stealth in this area, but it doesn't click to me that he's an infiltrator just yet, so I'm looking for holes or cracks in this rock formation to see where he ducked into. And I do still see his red blip on the map and another Reaver firing at him. And he's just not appearing because he's an infiltrator. He's ducking in and out of visibility, and I want him. I want to take him down. I want the kill, just as everyone else does. But here is a moment where I get too greedy. And here we can see me hitting escape because my eject key is actually tilde. So I'm in an emergency situation trying to eject and accidentally hitting the escape key at the same time, which brings up the map or the menu, depending on what you had open last. So now my Reaver is stuck up against the turret, up against the tower here. And I'm trying to jostle it out. It's possible sometimes to get your Reaver out of positions like this by hopping in and boosting thrusters in different directions and kind of trying to roll and pitch the Reaver in different directions to try and jolt it out of this really stuck position. Spoiler alert, I'm not able to do that. So let's just skip ahead. And at this point I'm thinking, well, I'm either going to get this thing out of here or I'm going to spawn a new Reaver. So let's just try the afterburners and see what happens. Turns out the Reaver explodes in a situation like that. Who knew? So now it's time to respawn. I've been flying long enough in this Reaver that my Reaver cooldown is already complete. So picking up a new one is a quick process. It's just a matter of jumping over to Havar, or spawning over at Havar, and then running over to the vehicle terminal. Alright, second Reaver in the air. There's a bit of a bug with the landing skids. Don't retract sometimes on the Reaver. You can fix this just by touching down on the ground and lifting back up. It's one thing that SOE has always had problems with. Sometimes Reaver skids will just do that. Now here in the middle of this fight, I'm scanning the ground for enemy targets, and I notice this guy trying to snipe from within our base. I'm thinking that might be the same infiltrator that I was chasing after before. You can pick out enemy targets in night vision like this, because you see they don't have a friendly colored triangle above their head. It might be kind of hard for newer players to pick out friendly targets that way. And after clearing the infantry within our base, thinning out their numbers a bit, I head out and intercept one of their tanks. Now here I'm getting shot by anti-air fire from behind. And normally I would suggest to any newer pilot that they bail out right away and don't go for the kill on that tank like I just went for. But I have an awareness at this point, after so many hours of flying in a Reaver, I just had an awareness that the enemy firing at me did not have a direct line of sight or did not have a direct bead on me, and therefore wasn't going to hit me with this direct volley. I could just tell by the way that the first couple of shots hit me, instead of like there being this massive burst, it was just a couple of hits. I felt that I was safe enough to continue pursuing that tank. But don't make the mistake as a newer pilot of sticking around in a situation like that, because you may very well get that second larger burst on you, and there goes your Reaver, or your ESF of any kind. So only until you've reached a certain position, or a certain point where you can feel that sort of thing, should you attempt that. Now here, again, I'm skirting the edge of a battle before I get back in, because it's been long enough since I skirted the edge of the battle and scouted it out and got a feel for it that I felt it was time to do it again, because the battle had progressed at this point. The battle is closer to our base now and is no longer centered on that tower. And in skirting the edge of the battle, that Reaver, that guy's on fire and lagging, so that's actually kind of bad. Really, that's actually really bad for him. But in skirting the edge of that battle, I was able to take out an engineer who was firing his anti-vehicle turret. I was able to put pressure on some enemy vehicles approaching the front of the base and get back over to Havar, to the Havar Tech plant over here, and repair. So now I've got a feel. Now I know what's actually happening in the fight. I know that the fight is taking place within our base now. I know where I need to actually be. I know where the center of combat is, which is where I don't want to be in a Reaver. You don't want to be in the center of combat, because that being in the air, you are visible to everybody at that point. And I do have the stealth cert equipped for my Reaver, so just because they can't see me on radar doesn't mean they can't visually see me. So I don't want to be right in the middle of combat. So now I know where the center of battle is. It's kind of somewhere in front of our base and between the enemy the enemy tower. And so the edges of the fight have changed. Now we can see me sweeping out further left than I did before. That's because the battle itself has shifted, and therefore the edge where I want to be before I swoop in has shifted as well. In doing so, I do spot an enemy sight. I pop my flares as I get locked on, and this allows me a few seconds to chase down the target. And I don't see that there's a follow-up lock on, so I'm able to stay in and dogfight. I do take out the target, and now here comes all the anti-air fire. Pretty spectacular display of fireworks up at the top there, or up in the sky there. And so that, of course, attracted attention and got them all firing on us. returning to Havar. It's time to repair my Reaver again. Nothing special to be said about this, really. I do have rank 5 of my engineer repair tool. I did fully cert that up because as a pilot you're repairing a lot and you want to be able to get your ESF repaired as quickly as possible. And now again, as I head back into the fight, this time I'm sweeping around over to the right at the edge of the battle. And I see some ground fighting going on here. I'm not able to get any solid hits with my breakers on those ground targets, and I do take a solid hit from a lightning or from some sort of anti-vehicle weapon from those ground turrets, and I see an enemy scythe on my radar who has not noticed me. So I turn to engage there.
Airborne target identified.
You can tell that the target has bailed from his scythe because of the way it drops from the ground. And now I'm taking some anti-air fire, being low on health as I was. And I'm trying to land as quickly as I can because fire will destroy you. And if you'll notice, one funny thing is, I was killed by somebody, well, my aircraft was destroyed by somebody with a beamer, which is the Vanu Sovereignty's default pistol. A guy with a pistol got the killing blow on a Reaver. So that's got to feel good. I've had that happen before from the ground. I've been infantry and then taking out an enemy aircraft with a bullet before. That's actually pretty fun. But anyway, that's the end of this particular segment. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys learned something if you're a newer pilot. And either way, whether you are or aren't, or whether you don't even really want to play Planetside, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.